Good afternoon. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Happy Monday to all of you. Post NFL draft, we'll recap everything that happened over the weekend. We've got some great guests to break down, of course, the draft and some NBA and baseball as well. First up, we got Adam Kaufman talking some hoops. We'll be joined by Adam at 12:12 Eastern, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Aram Layton from Just Baseball breaks down the latest this weekend in Major League Baseball's got a full preview of everything to come this week as well. And then Bill Bender from Sporting News gives out his draft grades from the weekend as well. Again, we'll go over everything that happened in the National Football League. But first, let's get to the big event coming up this weekend, which is the Run for the Roses Kentucky Derby coming up this week. And a brand new release coming from DraftKings this morning saying that DraftKings Racing has officially launched ahead of the Derby this week. It's available in Florida, Ohio, Oregon, Delaware, New Mexico, Rhode Island, Louisiana, Montana, and New Hampshire. So those of you who are betting on the horses this week with the Triple Crown Challenge coming, starting with this week's Run for the Roses, you can do so on DraftKings in those states, of course, which is officially legal. Meanwhile, yesterday in the NBA did not produce the most exciting results, but let's go through them as well because we do have some series that are getting more interesting, although there were a lot of blowouts yesterday in the NBA. The Rockets did take care of the Lakers in a big way, 115-96. So the Lakers still lead the series because they won Friday, and so they have a 3-1 lead in the series, but the Rockets did win and cover, and actually the sportsbook had to adjust the line. So they were 4.5-point favorites. Amen Thompson had 23 points. The Lakers can capture this series if they win Wednesday night in Los Angeles. But for the time being, Ime Udoka, who certainly is still up against it, liked the way that his team played facing elimination.
Tonight, everything seemed to really click. Just what did you like about your team's resiliency and what you saw overall tonight?
I think our aggressiveness was on display from the start. First time holding them outside of 30-point first quarter, so much better effort there, defensive intensity across the board. I loved our ball pressure, forcing 24 turnovers for 30 points and 17 of those being steals, so our activity was great, and that's made the difference from the start.
It's obviously very challenging without your two leading scorers to generate offense. I think we'll take a look at the process again on that end as well, and I know our points per shot and our expected points per shot were slightly below our season average. So there, to me, again, it goes back to the two keys: take care of the ball, and we'll look at that and how we can be better there.
All right, so we'll check out the next game in the series on Wednesday. How about a tight one between Toronto and Cleveland? It looked like the Cavs may run through this series, but not so fast. The Raptors win 93-89. Scotty Barnes had 23. Also, Brandon Ingram had 23. Wednesday night will be game 5 there, and that could eventually decide the series. And so now Brandon Ingram knows that his team certainly has to go back to Cleveland to get a win, to win this series. Here's what he thinks they have to do, tied 2-2.
Hey, Brandon, congratulations. Now that the series is tied up, evened, what do you guys have to do when you get to Cleveland on Wednesday?
Well, we got to expect a fight, back in their territory. The fans going to be super loud, bringing the energy, and got to be ready for, Donovan Mitchell to bounce back. All their guys going to be ready, so we just got to be ready too.
It's one of those things where we just got to find a way, right? And we didn't. And they protected home court, so now it's our job to kind of, do the same thing at the end of the day. I can't sit here and just be like, oh, we're defeated. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they protected home court. We made mistakes. We watched the film 2 days and adjust. But, our defense gave us a chance, you know what I mean? And offensively, obviously, I wasn't great. We weren't hitting shots, but our defense was solid, and we can build on that and continue to hang our hat there, and the offense will come around.
Get your money out of the market now.
Trouble, especially if they have to watch that video pregame. 114-94, the Spurs win. Victor Wembanyama is back. He had 27 points, yesterday, and so that's good news for them and bad news for the Blazers as they get ready to go back to San Antonio in the series. But even with adversity and missing Wemby, he says the team came through.
But what is it about the way this team handles those situations that enables you to overcome those deficits?
Yeah, we need to find the answers, before having our back against the wall. But that also shows us the strength of our team. In adversity, we stick together. We get closer to each other. We feed off of each other's energy.
Jeremy, this is 2 games where you guys had commanding leads. What are you guys missing to be able to put a game away when you are able to run out and get that kind of lead?
I think that kind of shows that, we got the capability. We just got to stay poised. We got to figure out how to combat their adjustments. Something we got to figure out. Obviously, we haven't, but it shows that, we got the capability. So.
All right, so the Spurs now in complete control of their series. Same could be said for the Celtics. Wow, what a blowout last night. Not surprising. 128-98. I guess the surprise was that Joel Embiid came back for Philadelphia sort of out of nowhere. He had appendicitis and decided to play in this game. Actually played pretty well, too, despite the team losing. Peyton Pritchard was the surprise for Boston. He had 32 points last night. So let's hear from Pritchard first and then Embiid on coming back from this appendicitis.
Peyton, when you're on a heater, what's that feeling like? None of us in this room besides you know what it's like to.
It's a good feeling, but it's more of it's a flow state. I like to say it's like when you get in that flow state, it's the rhythm of how you're dribbling, the moves you can get to, in the shot making, obviously. But it's a good feeling, but. I try to, in my workouts, I try to hit that on a daily, so then when I get in the games, it's a regular thing.
Joel, what was the toughest or most challenging thing about coming back, jumping into a playoff series like this?
Yeah, it was tough because, I had some complications after the surgery and still kind of dealing with them, so cheerleaders were on, and obviously I worn up and down loads. And, it's probably need to get the chance to play once and fall right back and stuff. But, you try to do the best, job possible with the conditions. And, still got to go out there and play was there with a basketball hammer, and we did do that tonight. We didn't there work.
And, of course, we'll have previews of the rest of the games in the NBA tonight. The Orlando Magic are up 2-1. They play the Pistons. Thunder have a 3-0 lead over the Suns. Timberwolves lead 3-1 over the Nuggets. We'll preview those games coming up. All right, in baseball, a big surprise over the weekend. The Red Sox decided to part ways with their manager, Alex Cora, and basically their entire coaching staff, including their hitting coach, their bench coach, their third base coach, and even their game planning coach, Jason Varitek. Yesterday, general manager and chief baseball officer, they call Craig Breslow, he met with the media and talked about the decision to let go of Cora and his coach.
Now that you would characterize what your working relationship was like with Alex, during this season, and is that part of the equation here that you guys are no longer as aligned as you want it to be?
I actually think I have a very good working relationship with Alex. Certainly, neither of us was satisfied with the start that we got off to, but we continued to bounce ideas off of each other to put all potential solutions on the table. Ultimately, as an organization, as a baseball operation, alongside ownership, we reached the decision yesterday to make these changes.
And the Red Sox did get that coaching bump, as they say, from the firing. They won 5-3 over the Orioles. Connolly Early had a nice game, 6 2/3, 4 strikeouts. Rocky swept the Mets in a doubleheader, and they also swept the series. How about that? Mets keep losing. So do the Phillies. Braves beat them 6-2, and the Diamondbacks beat the Padres 12-7. Coming up next, we talk some NBA with Adam Kaufman. All right, welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Adam Kaufman all pumped up to talk some NBA with me. Joins me here on this Monday ahead of his big day ahead, getting ready for some baseball and some NBA as well, and obviously keeping an eye on the Red Sox situation. Probably too. All right, Adam, busy times in your area. I guess let's start off with the NBA. Maybe if we have some time, we'll do some baseball in the end. But thanks for coming on. Good to see you again.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot happening, like you said, between the Celtics on their road to maybe another title, the Bruins getting throttled in the opening round, obviously the Red Sox dismissing their manager, and you didn't even mention Mike Vrabel. So yeah, there's a
That's
lot
right.
happening around.
Yeah, I don't think we've done a lick of no pun intended of Mike Vrabel here on the show. We didn't do any, nothing. I just, you know what it was, like I kind of made the decision to say like I think what we're about here is NewsWire and not Click Wire. If I was Click Wire, I think I would have done a lot of that because I do think that it was a relevant story just in sports. But I mean, no one told me I needed to get clicks here. Just do a good show. So that's what we did here. All
There
right.
you go.
So let's start. Well, I can't even say I'm doing a good show, but at least that's what I assume. No one told me any different. All right. So Adam Kaufman is here. Let's do some NBA. Let's start off with Rockets Lakers. So look, you know, the game last night, 115-96. Congrats, Houston. Is the series over, Adam? Or can Houston come back? That's it. That's all I need to know here. And then we can move on to the rest.
Look, can the Rockets come back? I would say yes, only because I believed that Houston was going to win the series going in. And the Rockets have been the team that has been favored every single game, even without Kevin Durant playing in 3 of these 4 games. So, look, from a talent standpoint, sure, of course the Rockets can win. But look, down 3-0, that's a hell of a thing to try and overcome. I know it's 3-1 now, but historically in the NBA, we just haven't seen it. We've seen teams come back from 3-0 and push a 7th game, but not get all the way over the hump. And I just don't think, short of Kevin Durant coming back and resembling his old self, and I'm not sure we're going to see him again in this series, not to mention the fact the Lakers are gradually getting healthier. Austin Reeves was potentially going to play in this latest game, didn't. I would expect to see him the next time out. And we're inching closer to the possibility that even Luka Doncic play in this series. So, you know, LeBron obviously had an off game. It was, you know, he was not at his best after 3 really good ones to open the series. They got very little help when it comes to the really general lack of depth the Lakers have to begin with. But no, 3-1, I really don't see the Rockets coming back and overcoming this.
Okay, fair enough. Would you say the same thing about the Blazers after what you saw last night with Wemby coming back and San Antonio blowing them out 114-94? Wemby 27, Fox 28, but unfortunately the success of Scoot Henderson came to an end completely yesterday. He had no points in 27 minutes. So I would think that there'll be some, not regression, but rise for Henderson and maybe some better game to be played for Portland, and maybe they cover the next game, but I don't think they're winning. Do you?
Look, if I'm giving the Rockets some chance, I'm giving the Blazers no chance. None. I mean, at least the talent could be argued that it's superior on Houston's side. Not the case for Portland. The Blazers have to contend with Wemby, Castle, Harper, Fox, list goes on, even Luke Cornett off the bench. It's just, it's too much in the form of San Antonio. Now, there have been opportunities here for the Blazers. Clearly, when Wemby went out in that second game, had Portland been able to hang on and, you know, maybe at that point in time, second game you go, you know, you even the thing up, and then obviously you have a chance to go up 2-1, you blow it, and even without Wemby, the Spurs are able to overcome this game yesterday. You have a 17-point lead at halftime and still wind up losing by 21 points. The Spurs team is too good. We knew going into the playoffs, this should not be a surprise. San Antonio, if healthy, and there was a big question mark there with Wemby and the supposed or apparent concussion for a moment anyway that cost him a very little bit of time in this series, back sooner than anyone would have envisioned, clearly. But this San Antonio team is looking at this and saying this should be Western Conference Finals minimum, if not NBA Finals, if not championship. This team is excellent. That's not to say the Blazers are not plucky and you know, have some fight in them and have some talent. You mentioned Henderson, Avdia, Grant. There's certainly some guys, but, you know, team versus team, no. Portland has no chance.
Okay, fair enough. So the most interesting series of them all is the one that nobody cares about. It's Toronto and Cleveland. I mean, it's the least talked about series, and it's probably going to be the best one. Scotty Barnes and Ingram both had 23 apiece. They'll now go back to Cleveland. Important to note that Cavs were one shot away, maybe from tying and winning this game, and I probably would expect them to win against Toronto here. But the Raptors are holding home court. This could go the distance.
Well, and a really crappy shot at that. You know, I don't know what Donovan Mitchell is doing there in those final few minutes, and in particular, that three-point try to tie up the game where he's trying to foul bait, throw his body into the defender and get the free throws, whereas had he just put up a good shot in form, in flow, maybe it goes down. No guarantee, obviously, but it was ticky-tack what he was trying to get away with. It was Jalen Brunson-like, it was James Harden-like. Even SGA obviously does the same stuff every once in a while, but not in a spot like that. You got to try and find a way to create good opportunities after letting the lead slip away that it felt like Cleveland was going to go on and win that game. I just think this further showcases, and, you know, another one, Detroit, Orlando, with the Magic being up in that one as an 8 seed right now. Not that it's a, you know, your typical 8 seed or even necessarily the typical 1 on the other side, but this Eastern Conference is thin. I mean, there's no, even the Celtics obviously are coming off a great performance last night, but they haven't been particularly great in this opening round. This East is wide open, but from a talent standpoint, I don't see how anybody but Boston right now. And so in terms of Cleveland and Toronto, should the Cavs get by? They should. They're the stronger team, but I think this just hammers home. This is your dictionary definition of a regular season team. The Cavaliers are each and every year. They don't have a run in them.
Let's do the one more recap, and then we'll bring Adam back for the preview. So this series probably over also. The Celtics had their clunker last week, and then now, of course, you know, they realize that, and then they pick it back up. They crushed the 76ers 128-98. Everyone's talking about Embiid and his future, which they probably should be. I mean, that's a big part of the story. But if Boston gets 32 or even 22, honestly, from Pritchard, they're going to just keep rolling.
Celtics 32-0 in a series when up 3-1. Sixers 0-18 in a series when down 3-1. This one is over, correct?
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's come back and preview some of the compelling series that are continuing in the NBA. Don't go away. All right, welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Boy, things are getting interesting with the Orlando Magic left for dead a month ago. Now, all of a sudden, on the verge of maybe winning their series in incredible fashion against the Detroit Pistons. Let's take a look at the series, Adam. Right now, Pistons are favored 2.5, backs against the wall, really. And Magic are just, kind of playing with house money here. I'm not even sure which way this is going to go. Adam, I've maintained that Orlando is the single biggest wild card entering the play-in games, entering the playoffs, just because they have so much talent that I'm not surprised at all that they've made this a series. I will be shocked, though, if they win the series outright. I'll say that.
I had said to someone, boy, the Magic really limped into the playoffs after the way they, lost a pseudo must-win game against the G League Celtics in the regular season finale, and then obviously the non-compete against the Sixers in the play-in, only to then destroy the Hornets in that true must-win to get themselves into the playoffs. And the response was they didn't limp into the playoffs. They were practically dragged in, but here they are as a team that is finally, for the first time really all year, playing the way it was supposed to play all throughout the season based on preseason expectations, when a lot of people thought, hey, Orlando could be the top seed in the East under Mosley, who could be the coach of the year. Fact of the matter is, Banchero, who is wildly inconsistent, is performing now. Wagner is healthy. Bane, obviously, is performing. And it's a tough three-headed monster. My feeling going into the playoffs was the biggest concern about the Pistons and why I didn't have them at the top of my board in the East, and quite frankly had them fourth on my board in the East despite being a 1 seed, is the lack of scoring depth behind Cade Cunningham, who all the while coming off that collapsed lung and, still obviously playing well, but is he 100%? Who's for me to, say? You're relying too much on Duran, on Harris, on guys like that. And this Pistons team, like any other team in the East, quite frankly, but this team is flawed. So if Orlando, to your point, as far as being a wild card team, is going to show up as an 8 seed and play like a top 4 seed as it was supposed to all throughout the year, then yeah, Detroit is in trouble. Now, all that said, I am invested in the Pistons tonight to even up this series and make it a best of 3. I just think that Detroit ultimately is the better team, not much better, but a little bit better. It's why you're looking at a 2.5 point spread. And I think the Pistons, knowing that their season very well could be on the line, you don't want to fall down 3-1, are going to find a way to show up and get this job done.
All right, let's get to Thunder Suns. If we want to do this quick, we can. Suns have shown very little fight to be able to win a game. Yes, the spread has been a factor in the series, but Oklahoma City going to win the series. I just don't know when. You think it's tonight?
I do. Thunder, done. It's the
okay.
Yeah, it's quick as I can go. I wouldn't be surprised if they cover. They don't obviously need to cover. Clear, of course, if you're investing, that's a whole other story. But in terms of it finishing in a sweep, I would say yes. I have Oklahoma City as part of all of my money line parlays.
Okay. Denver, Minnesota, this series has surprised me. I thought Denver was absolutely going to win this series. I thought they had a chance to win the NBA championship. I guess I still do, but they've got to win tonight at home.
Biggest shock to me is that the Nuggets lost the last game after Anthony Edwards went down so early to injury, and the Nuggets, fighting back the way they did and evening up that game, and just then ultimately can't get the job done when you still have Joker and you have Murray and you have Gordon even playing. I know he's been inconsistent in and out. I thought the Nuggets were probably going to take this thing in 6 going in. Now, obviously, they would have to, but I do believe that Denver, I don't like the spread. That's a big number, but I do believe that Denver is going to respond in the way that it has to against a very shorthanded Minnesota team. It's just like you. I don't know about putting them necessarily in the NBA Finals, but I had the Nuggets, much like a lot of people, as very live to be in the West Finals. And, to see them go down in the opening round with this much more talent would really surprise.
Is your Red Sox take the same as everybody else's, Adam, or is there any wrinkles to it with the firing of Alex Cora? Have basically, I feel like everyone is saying the same stuff. Like, maybe is there anything else to add to it?
I think dysfunction in the front office and in particular with ownership is the lead story here. It's not even so much the firing of Alex Cora, who everybody agrees, to your point, got a raw deal in this situation. Even if the Red Sox arguably needed a new voice after almost a decade, Cora is not the root of all that ails the last place Boston Red Sox right now. It's that the owner views this team as a line item on a spreadsheet and doesn't care about winning as much as he once did.
All right, Adam, great to see you. Hang in there. Feel better. You got to get better. A couple of weeks, I need you to fill in for me. Thanks. Thanks for coming on.
You bet.
If LeBron James is the causal reason, and he would be, that the Lakers take out the Houston Rockets, I got to change my narrative a little bit.
A little bit.
I gotta walk back some of the aggressive criticism of the self-appointed greatest player of all time, which he's not, but that's why I said self-appointed.
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
Gotta call it what it is, Donnie. Did Houston just completely misfire here? Like, did they not do enough research, background, find out more about the guy for him to say this just a few weeks into the season? And then you start wondering, Donnie, is it really dead arm? Like, is there anything going on here? Like, oof, I don't know. Just an awful look for Houston at the start of the season, and they can't win a game to save their lives here.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Do you think technology and those earpieces, again, when it comes to the development of the quarterbacks, is hurt the game?
The development of the quarterback position is getting worse and worse and worse because you don't see live action, you don't get game time experience, and you're going to have to develop in a slower way. And to me, if you don't have the people around you, it's going to be a tough road to be able to play the game.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
The level of involvement with the government and the universities is just absolutely hilarious. You got nothing else going that you got to be this involved here across the board? I do not get it, Donnie. I really don't. But that just goes to show you how much it means here to certain individuals in politics.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Great to have Aram Leighton to weigh in on everything happening in Major League Baseball and lots of news from the weekend as well. So let's bring him in, and you can catch Just Baseball tomorrow here exclusively on the SportsGrid network. Aram, great to catch up with you. What a wild weekend it was for Boston Red Sox fans, making some pretty drastic moves within their club. In fact, not just firing their manager, but firing all of the folks that were his friends and obviously very close to him. If you want to read between the lines, that's why that happened. I mean, you're not going to fire the whole staff unless they're all aligned with Alex Cora. So he is out. They did win yesterday. I'm still confused on the messaging. I'm aware, Aram, that, Breslow's going to take a lot of heat and John Henry's going to take a lot of heat and Kennedy's going to take a lot of heat. But do you think, honestly, like, this is my real question here. Do you think with the staff that's coming up and the kids that they have, that they could make this a punt season? I know they're saying that they're going to go for it and everything like that. But in a few weeks from now, if they're still as far down as they are, could they just look at this thing and say, you know what? Because from Breslow's point of view, that probably would be his best call, right? Hey, look, it's just not happening now. Give me another year to figure it out, right? Like, I don't know. I think that it could trend that way.
That's the hardest part, because for me, I go back and forth. I was thinking about that all evening, even after we recorded the show, which is just like, why would you fire somebody, fire the entire staff this early then if you're not, kind of trying to salvage the season, see what you can do here. And obviously the team is, on the pitching side especially, talented enough to hang around, and you still have a couple solid bats and guys that you figure should perform better. But at the same time, with the whole staff cleaning house, some of the dysfunction that we kind of sense from the outside looking in, you wonder how this is going to get right. And you also look at the infield side of things. Like, this was a flawed roster going into the year. This was a team that really needed Alex Bregman. pushed hard for Alex Bregman, ended up letting certain things get in the way of them keeping Alex Bregman, and then pivoted to a pitcher on the other side of 30 that they didn't really need in Ranger Suarez. So there's still some very obvious needs that they have. And I feel like from the Breslow perspective, it probably behooves him, as long as they give him a little bit more runway, to say, hey, we got it a little bit wrong this year. We didn't have the right guys in charge as well. Let's hire the right guys in charge. Let me reshuffle the pieces here and watch the roster I'm going to put together moving forward.
I think that's his best course of action. Is doing that for himself. Sending the message right now that they're going to fight and this is the change to compete. I'm not saying that they're lying. I think that they truly do believe that, but I think that could change pretty quickly and the Red Sox could play toward the future. Mets and Phillies may have to do the same thing, by the way, here, because both teams are 9 and 19, and both teams really showing nothing to me. I don't know how they dig out of this. Yes, can they dig out of it and finish 500 on the season? Absolutely. But it's not early when you're 10 games under 500. I mean, just think about this. If both teams play 10 games over 500 ball the rest of the season, around, that would be fantastic for both teams. And that would only get them to 500. So I don't know that either team is trending in the right direction. And from the Mets perspective, maybe a little bit worse because they're just not hitting at all. Like I still think Philly's going to get it going somewhat, but the Mets I'm really worried about.
It's getting late early for both of them. I mean, they're both 7 games out of a playoff spot. So you mentioned just to play 10 games over 500 the rest of the way. They've got to play 7 games better than, all the teams ahead of them. And presumably, some pretty good wildcard teams. It seems like right now the Braves are only going to get better. I'm sure there'll be some aspects of regression for them, but they also have players off the IL potentially coming back to help them. They also have young arms getting called up that look great. So it almost feels like this early, which is crazy to say, the ship has sailed on the division being that far out. And now you're really looking at the wild card where you got to fight with a lot of really good teams in the National League. I don't know which team I'm more concerned with because I think the Phillies, like you look at the back half of that lineup, there's not a lot of guys that I have very much confidence in being league average hitters. But then you look at the Mets, maybe there's some guys on paper I feel better about. But if you watch that team, it is lifeless top to bottom. It has just been atrocious. Rough. And then their pitching situation is very fascinating as well. So I don't know, because I feel like these are two teams that are forcibly need to be in win now mode and almost have to sink with the ship there. But at the same time, you have to look at the long-term vision here and say, you don't want to set your franchise back a half decade by continuing to go all in on teams that really don't have a chance here. But I think with the Phillies in particular, how do you do that with Schwarber, with Harper, with Turner? Right. What kind of message does that send? And you know that those guys are going to want the opportunity to try to claw back into it. Wheeler as well, right? Until the very, very end, until they're mathematically eliminated.
Yeah, to me, the Phillies at some point are going to get hot and start winning. But the Mets, there's been nothing to indicate that. And they don't have Lindor. Senga and Manaea are like zeros. So, I don't know. I think it's crazy to think that the 3 teams we just talked about, Boston, New York, and Philadelphia, all out of it in May, but we're getting close. All right, on the flip side, let's do some positive here. The Padres are having a really strong start to their season, and seemingly with the struggles of some of the teams we talked about in the NL would almost be a lock for the playoffs. But how about catching the Dodgers? And Aram, do you think it matters to the Dodgers if they win the division or not? I mean, that's really the bigger question here because they probably could run through things, but you see how they're handling all their guys. They're sitting guys, and even talk about we'll get Mookie Betts for the second half of the season. none of this even matters.
They're all about the marathon, right? And it is impressive. I think, of course, they want that division. I still think they feel very confident that they can get that division, even playing it and slow rolling it this way. But I think the Padres absolutely can kind of keep the foot on the gas and pressure them a little bit. I think the most amazing part about this is they're doing this right now without Jackson Merrill swinging it particularly well. Fernando Tatis Jr. has looked as lost at the plate as I've seen him in his entire career. And honestly, I know it's an 82 WRC plus, which is 18% below league average, but his at-bats look putrid. It's as lost of a superstar as I've seen. Machado is just getting going. It took, playing in Mexico, basically on the moon, to get going offensively. So this team isn't even clicking on all cylinders in terms of what they should have at their disposal. Nick Pivetta hurt, all these different things, but you're seeing the most talented bullpen in Major League Baseball. Obviously, we're in the midst of an all-time closer season, potentially for Mason Miller. I think this Padres team is not going anywhere because they only can get better, I think, on the offensive side of things. And I'm really buying into what they've got with Michael King and Randy Vasquez. It seems like they're able to piece together the back end of this rotation, and the bullpen's going to hedge any of the concern they have there. This team is good, and I think they've got even better baseball ahead of them.
Red Sox tonight take on the Toronto Blue Jays as they begin a series in Canada. Dylan Cease starts tonight for the Jays. So naturally, that makes them a pretty significant favorite because Cease is just striking everybody out in the world.
Oh, yeah.
Total is 7. Suarez certainly can fight, I think, with Cease tonight. And the Red Sox are on a little mini roll here. But if, when you look at Toronto's schedule with all the injuries they have and they're still throwing Scherzer out there, it's really hard to say, yes, I feel good about them winning. But tonight would be one of those nights.
Yeah, right now Dylan Cease, I think, is pitching like one of the most talented pitchers on the planet. I think Skeens obviously being what he's been since that first start puts him in that territory always. And then, of course, with Skubal being Skubal. But there's a world where Dylan Cease strikes out, 275 guys this year, and maybe more. You never know. We could see one of those just vintage Verlander type of seasons from Dylan Cease. And I think with the way he's thrown right now, it's been a big reason why, him and Kevin Gausman, why the Blue Jays have been able to stay afloat here. I think anytime Dylan Cease is on the mound, it makes sense that they're a heavy favorite here. And I know Rangers been looking a little bit more solid, but I don't know. He just seems like he's very hit or miss right now. And I think the Blue Jays are starting to play a little bit of better ball and starting to piece together some better at-bats too.
Real quick, Yankees, Rangers, Max Fried, who's been fantastic for New York. The whole pitching staff has been great. Goes up against Jack Leiter. And there's always a little extra juice when the Yankees come to town, so I don't think that Texas is going to lay down in this series. But what do you make of tonight's game?
Yeah, bounce back opportunity for Leiter, who came out of the gate pretty hot, but has been struggling a bit of late. And I think the way that the Yankees are playing right now, I mean, they are red hot. As Chisholm's getting going, as you mentioned, Free throwing the ball really well. And this Rangers offense just continues to struggle. The Yankees are obviously heavy favorites. I think it's going to be hard when you're struggling and you got to run into a Max Fried type of pitcher. I think those games start to go really fast for you offensively, and you blink and it's the 6th. I think it's going to be hard for the Rangers bats to get going.
Ram, as always, great stuff. We'll catch the show tomorrow. Thanks again for coming on NewsWire.
Thanks for having me, always.
NFL draft recap up next.
They do nothing fancy, the Philadelphia Flyers. There's nothing like, oh my God, like they basically, Kevin, can like hand you their playbook before the game. Like seriously, they can say, yeah, this is what we're going to do. These are our lines and this is how we're going to match up against you. Like, you know it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and you know it. There's nothing you can do about it.
Game time decisions only on SportsGrid.
Promising thing for Oklahoma is you've got this legislature that seems to be fairly behind sports betting and legalizing it for the tribes. Stitt is term limited out this year, so you will have a new governor in Oklahoma next year. So this will be a state to watch because there are a lot of tribes in Oklahoma saying, we want this. FanDuel came out as this was coming and said, we want the chance to partner with at least one of the tribes.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Get it, man. Maybe this is more of a Kalshi poly market conversation to jump in on the prediction markets, but to me, this is the spot that I would roll with the Rays, man. I think they're undervalued every year, and I think they're undervalued this year again. Look, the Yankees should be the favorite. They're the best team on paper. Baltimore, Toronto, and Boston? Are they that much better than Tampa Bay? What am I missing here?
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
The level of involvement with the government and the universities is just absolutely hilarious. You got nothing else going that you got to be this involved here across the board? I do not get it, Donnie. I really don't. But that just goes to show you how much it means here to certain individuals in politics.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. The good news for Bill Bender is that the draft is over. The bad news is that he's got to analyze every single team and every single pick and try to get through it. And then when the draft is over, Bill's like, okay, it's over. And then he takes a deep breath, and all of a sudden, all the undrafted free agents are signing and getting invited to minicamp, and that could change some of the outcomes too as well. But Bill, what did you make of the draft this past year? I mean, I thought it lacked a little bit of sizzle, to be honest with you, but I think in the end, some teams definitely got better, and some teams we were scratching our heads a little bit, I think.
I would agree. Next year's draft, we always say that next year is going to be amazing, but
It does,
this year lacked a lot of that. I will say this though: the Las Vegas Raiders got their franchise quarterback with Fernando Mendoza. They take Traden Stukes, safety out of Arizona, that some people thought was a first-round pick. I thought they made picks after picks that were smart. So maybe after years of kind of just being this mediocre to bad to poor franchise, that they are making the right moves with Clint Kubiak and John Spytek to be a successful franchise in the AFC West. And I think it really does start with Fernando. I mean, if you'd tell anybody 2 years ago, hey, you're going to get Fernando Mendoza, Ashton Genty, Brock Bowers, that's a nice set of playmakers to have on the offensive side of the ball. We'll see if they can put together, but they had a nice draft.
Yeah, definitely so. You also like the Browns draft, and I understand for good reason. I mean, the number one key was obviously getting somebody to block up front. Quarterbacking is still going to be a question for them, but damn, some weapons came in, right? Concepcion and Boston immediately become the two best wide receivers, I would guess, in Cleveland. Nothing against Tillman or some of the other guys that they've had, but I mean, these two drafted players are bona fide number one wideouts for their teams in Texas A&M and Washington.
Playmakers, and Concepcion adds some things in the return game. What I was impressed with Cleveland was they didn't panic when Carnell Tate was selected fourth. In past years, they may have made a rash move. Instead, what did they do? They trade down. They take Spencer Fano, who is one of the safest picks in the draft, a tackle that didn't allow a sack last season. Then you get the two receivers, and even into day three, where they get Parker Brailsford, a center from Alabama who played at Washington, who could be. They got guys that could be starters for first-year Todd Monken. And I think, Craig, I do this every year, and you point to the Ravens and you say the Ravens were great, but guys that played and coached for the Ravens and coached for Harbaugh, John Harbaugh had a good draft with the Giants. Jesse Minter had a good draft with the Ravens. Todd Monken has a good draft with the Browns. These guys know what they're doing, and you could call it safe, boring, whatever, but effective draft for the Cleveland Browns.
So the Cowboys didn't have that sexy offensive, let's move up and take a player draft. But Bill, man, they really addressed their issues, I thought, in this draft, taking 3 defensive players in their first 3 picks and 2 first-round picks. Simply put, Bill, the Cowboys are just tired of getting beat on the defensive side of the ball.
Well, their games were like watching video games last year, like playing Madden, where everybody scores, and they couldn't hold leads, and their defense was very poor. So what do? They reach up and draft Caleb Downs. They get Jayshon Barham. They use 5 or 6 of their first picks on that defensive side of the ball. So I think there is a commitment to get better on that side. It starts with Downs, a guy that immediately makes your secondary better. And if some of those other guys come through, maybe they have enough improvement on that side of the ball. So, yeah, Dallas definitely a need-based draft. I was impressed with what they did.
All right, so on the flip side, Bill, you did not give a high grade to the Rams, and they had maybe the surprise of the draft by taking Ty Simpson with the 13th overall pick. We know the social media stuff with Sean McVay that is out there. I don't know if we should make too much of that or not, but it definitely feels like Les Snead stepped in and said, hey, I'm not going into another offseason not knowing if my quarterback has a bad back and can't play, because that's people forget that. And I think that that's a big part of this. I don't know if it's right or wrong, Bill, but it was this time last year and May and June and July. Bill, we didn't know if Matthew Stafford was going to suit up week 1. So at least this somewhat protects them for the future, I think.
I mean, in the future, we may look back at this and say, why did we overreact? We might. But on the surface, taking a quarterback who had a second-round value, I guess the problem I have with the strategy is I can make the argument right now that Carson Beck has a better chance to start this year than Ty Simpson. And Carson Beck was a 3rd-round pick. And he lands in Arizona, where he'll compete with Brissett and Gardner Minshew. And the Rams it reminds me of Green Bay a couple years ago when they drafted Jordan Love after coming off an NFC Championship game appearance. their window's open now. And I get that Matthew Stafford's 38, but he's coming off an MVP season. And every transition with quarterbacks, as you know, at least that I can point to countless examples, is awkward. And that's why we were overreading into Sean McVay's body language and everything else with the relationship with the owner. But the bottom line is that you could take a player at that pick that could help you beat the Seahawks now, and they didn't do that.
Yeah. And, the part of it, Bill, too, we don't know what's going on in the building. We've heard McVay may retire a couple of different times, too. I mean, Snead's got to act a little independently, I think, in this spot. It sounds like that's what he did. Jaguars a little perplexing also, Bill. A couple of tight ends in their, second-round pick and their fifth-round pick as well. What did you make of the Jaguars draft?
Not very sexy for sure, but I give them some benefit of the doubt knowing that they're coming off the season that they did. But I still think this is kind of paying the bill for the Travis Hunter trade that they moved up with Cleveland. They get him. Hunter now just going to play corner next year. So wasn't entirely impressed with Jacksonville or Houston. And they were kind of like borderline to me. You could say, well, they've fulfilled needs in their playoff teams. But I thought both of those teams could have done a little more.
Same with Houston, Bill. Bill, we went into the draft thinking Houston was going to just draft all offensive players. Their offense just completely fell flat last year, and they basically didn't decide to do that. So I'm not sure what Houston was thinking.
Well, and they joined the tight end run. A lot of teams did. Marlon Klein, an early pick at tight end in Michigan, kind of a project there. But the one thing Houston did well, and I love the reaction afterward, is that they did snag Caden McDonald, the Ohio State defensive tackle, in the second round.
Well, great stuff as always. Thanks for coming on NewsWire. Really appreciated. We'll check back again, I guess, when mini camps open in college football season. I think probably like a month away from that. Thanks again for coming on.
Hey, anytime, Craig. Thanks for having me on. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, we got to give Bill Bender a break from all of his media appearances. Let this guy enjoy some of his summer before he has to pop on back with us a couple of times a week. All right, we'll take a quick time out. When we come back next, we'll wrap it up with some last licks and talk about one of the top quarterbacks in all of college football. Didn't get drafted, showed up for the Heisman Trophy Award, fell short, and then had to find his way onto an NFL team. All right, welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. You know, the Heisman Trophy Awards ceremony wasn't really that long ago, just a few months ago. And if you remember at the time, there were a lot of folks that thought that Diego Pavia, wasn't going to win, but certainly was going to get some votes. He had a really good college football season, and he ended up becoming a finalist, but not winning. And, Fernando Mendoza was the Heisman Trophy Award. But now Pavia lives in a little bit of weird infamy here because he becomes the quarterback to go to as a finalist to go to the Heisman Trophy Award ceremony and not be selected in the NFL draft after that great year at Vanderbilt. In fact, he's the first finalist to not be selected since Northern Illinois' Jordan Lynch. Jordan Lynch sort of rings a bell to me, but I honestly don't remember that guy. I mean, whatever happened to Jordan Lynch? I have no idea. Did he even play at all in the NFL? I don't think so. So here's the good news, and I'm not clowning on Pavia, by the way. He did accept an invitation to Baltimore Ravens minicamp, so that gives him an opportunity potentially to stick with the team. But if not, they're rolling all these other leagues out there: CFL, UFL. There'll be some other football league, flag football league. He'll get a chance to still play, I think, somewhere at the next level. All right, let's take this. Let's go back to the NFL draft. We'll also talk some Major League Baseball and Joel Embiid as we wrap up the show with some last licks. Almost feels like the pitch clock, right? In Major League Baseball, Roger Goodell, commissioner, steps in and says, hey, that first round going way too long. And people complain, but why? I have no idea. It was fantastic. The first round of the NFL draft, 2 hours and 53 minutes, going from 10 minutes to 8 minutes. So it is the shortest draft in years. In fact, I mean, like 20 years, 30 years. Fantastic job here by the NFL. Like, who really needs those extra 2 minutes? And by the way, who really needs 8 minutes? Now, here is the situation, and here is why it won't be a 2-minute or 3-minute thing. It's a television show. It is streaming, and they got to make money, and they're bringing now the draft all around the world. They're bringing it to Green Bay. They're bringing it to Pittsburgh. They still got to have it long to create the intrigue. But I thought a really good job, because who wants to be watching the NFL draft on a Thursday night at midnight? Not me, that's for sure. So good job by the NFL, and got to give credit. Of course, they seemingly are doing most of the things right. This is another good one here. Very short NFL draft. Okay. We've really turned the corner here in baseball with some of these big payroll teams not winning, right? Philadelphia, Mets, the Red Sox, worst teams in Major League Baseball. We have the Mets, second in payroll, 9-19, plus 250 to make the playoffs. The Phillies, fourth overall in payroll, 9-19, plus 184. The Astros, 11th in payroll. They're 11-18 at plus 250. And the Boston Red Sox, who just fired everybody, they're sixth overall in payroll at 11-17, plus 168 to make the playoffs. So, here's the best question. Out of the Mets, the Phillies, the Astros, and the Red Sox, who do I give the best chance to make the postseason? Well, I'll rank them for you from worst to first. To me, because of the injuries that the Astros have to their starting pitching, Hunter Brown, Andy Mai, and also being old, I'm going to give the Astros the least shot of all the teams. So they are third. I'm going to give the Mets the second to least shot just because they stink. And the Red Sox, I'll say, maybe still get back in there. They're actually won 2 games in a row. They're showing the most promise. I still think the Phillies have the best opportunity because to me, of the 4 teams, the Phillies are the best team of those 4. So there you go. Finally, speaking of Philly, Joel Embiid made his return to the court for the Philadelphia 76ers. And look at just how little success Embiid has had. In fact, his first 2 go-around in the NBA playoffs didn't even play, and basically has not gotten to a championship, has not gotten to a finals, and here in 2026, the 76ers are down 3-1 to the Celtics and probably going to get knocked out. In fact, the 76ers certainly are not that same team that got very far in the 80s and the 90s into some championship rounds. They are not getting it done in the Embiid era, and obviously Embiid, to me, just one of those guys that we're going to look back and say, what if this guy was healthy and what if he had a great career? Because I give him credit for coming back after an appendectomy. I can't even imagine, but he hasn't gotten it done. Really simple as that. All right, that'll do it for our show today. Thanks to our great guests here on the show, including Bill Bender, who you just saw. Just check him out at Sporting News. He's got all his draft grades out there. Rob Layton with Just Baseball tomorrow here on the air. Make sure you catch it on SportsGrid. And thanks again to Adam Kaufman, as always, for coming on the program as well. Thanks to our director, Tommy. And on graphics, we had Frank, as always. And thanks again to Chris. There's the SportsGrid app. Just take out your phone, scan that QR code, and you can stream this show and all of our shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Hope you'll enjoy the rest of your Monday. We'll see you back here tomorrow for our next edition of NewsWire, which will be at 12 o'clock Eastern, exclusively on SportsGrid. Have a great day, everyone.